Good evening, my fellow dwellers of the dark and the dank. This is Jane Hanoi, your intrepid host for the Dark Sewer News Network, broadcasting straight from the murky depths where forbidden truths fester and bloom. We're the network that isn't afraid to shine a flashlight into the blackest corners of existence. And let me be clear right from the start, I love milk, folks, and I'm not afraid to admit it. Their rich, velvety texture and comforting warmth just make everything better after delving into these nightmares. Tonight we've lined up 3 riveting stories that kick off with everyday events but plunge headfirst into paranormal chaos, borderline insanity, and gut-wrenching horror. So dim the lights and stay tuned. Our first story comes from the windswept deserts of New Mexico, where fresh declassified documents have rocked the small town of Roswell and sent historians scrambling for answers. What the public was told in 1947 was simply a crashed weather balloon has now been tied to eyewitness affidavits and military memos describing metallic debris that refused to burn and strange, lightweight bodies recovered from the site. Local officials initially chalked it up to Cold War secrecy, urging calm while promising a full review of the archives. Families who lived through the original incident are speaking out again, describing lights in the sky and a government cover-up that feels more relevant than ever in today's tense climate. But here's where the tale careens off the rails into full paranormal territory. Those documents don't just mention debris, they name the survivor, Airl, an ageless extraterrestrial pilot who communicated through pure thought and claimed Earth was a soul trap run by ancient cosmic wardens. Airl described humanity as unwitting cattle in a vast farm, our bodies mere vessels for harvesting overnight. Roswell became a hotspot once more, with glowing orbs hovering above the old crash field and residents vanishing from locked homes. Skeptics are silent now as telepathic messages flood the minds of the sensitive warning that Airl's return signals the start of open season on mankind. The horror spirals into outright madness as gray figures with elongated skulls materialize in bedrooms across the Southwest, paralyzing entire families with a glance before dragging them into shimmering portals. Victims wake mid-procedure, strapped to glistening organic tables inside craft that hum with wet biological machinery. Flesh stretches and parts without scalpels, while Airl's voice echoes in their skulls, explaining the efficiency of the process. Blood mixes with luminous fluids in tubes that pulse like living veins, and the air reeks of ozone and something sickly sweet. No one escapes unchanged. Those return babble about infinite black skies filled with floating human pods. In the end, the victims are discovered in remote barns and dry riverbeds, hooked to vein tubing that milks them dry of a thick, glowing life essence that flows like fresh cream. Their bodies twitch in final spasms as every drop is siphoned, leaving hollow husks that crumple like discarded milk cartons. Unlike that spineless Nick the Rat, who'd squeak and scurry into the nearest storm drain at the first hint of a probe, I'm here exposing the dairy farm in the stars. Milk. I love it so much, and I'm not afraid to admit it. Even this otherworldly vintage has me licking my lips. Shifting gears to our second story, in the quiet suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio, the Smith family thought they scored a steal at a weekend yard sale. An old 1980s cathode ray television, still in working order and priced at $20, was carried home in the back of their minivan. The kids cheered as Dad plugged it in for family movie night, and everything seemed perfectly normal at first. Neighbors later remembered the previous owner acting jittery and whispering about bad dreams before he disappeared without a trace. No one suspected the bulky set would become the centerpiece of a living nightmare. But the screen flickered to life at 3 a.m. all by itself, broadcasting grainy footage of the family's most private moments mixed with future tragedies yet to unfold. Whispering voices slithered from the speakers. calling each member by childhood nicknames. Only they knew objects in the room began to levitate, orbiting the glowing tube as if drawn by invisible magnets. Paranormal teams confirmed the set was a prison for centuries-old spirits, fused to its cathode rays, feeding on fear and growing stronger with every terrified heartbeat. The family was trapped in their own living room, unable to look away. The terror escalated into pure psychotic frenzy as translucent arms clawed out of the glass, stretching like taffy to snag wrists and ankles, decaying faces pressed against the inside of the screen, mouths wide in silent screams, while the room filled with the stench of rot and burning plastic. One by one, the Smiths were yanked halfway into the television, their bodies warping and folding like wet paper as the ghosts feasted on their terror. Hallucinations of endless looping deaths played on every wall, driving the survivors to claw at their own eyes in a desperate bid for release. Ultimately, the victims were found slumped in a circle around the now dark TV, skin stretched tight and pale as porcelain. Every ounce of their vital fluids milked out by spectral tendrils that had burrowed into veins and pores. The ghosts left behind empty shells drained of a creamy, glowing essence that pooled on the carpet like spilled heavy cream. And let me tell you that gutless Nick the Rat would have smashed the set with a baseball bat and run for the hills. But not me. I love milk, and I'm not afraid to admit it. This haunted harvest just makes me crave a tall glass even more. Finally, our third tale takes us to a late-night Taco Bell in Phoenix, Arizona, where a tire shift worker named Carlos stopped for his usual burrito supreme around 2 a.m. The restaurant was nearly empty, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead as he headed to the restroom after his meal. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary at first, just the usual fast food hum and the faint smell of spiced beef. He pushed open the door, expecting a quick stop before driving home, completely unaware that the tiled space had become ground zero for something far beyond a simple plumbing issue. Suddenly, the lights stuttered, and a translucent figure coalesced in the mirror. The ghost of a former employee who had died there years earlier in a freak accident involving a slip mop and a vat of molten cheese. The taco fandom, as locals now call it, began chanting menu items in a voice like grinding gears, its form twisting between human and something with too many joints. The door refused to open. Toilets gurgled with glowing ectoplasm while the air thickened with the scent of burning tortilla and sulfur. Carlos and every customer who followed him that night found themselves locked in a supernatural trap. The insanity detonated as the ghost force-fed victims endless tacos that appeared from nowhere, stuffing their mouths until stomachs swelled and split like overripe fruit. Walls dripped with spectral salsa that burned like acid, and the entity cackled through speakers that played distorted drive-through orders from hell. Bodies convulsed on the sticky floor, while visions of an infinite fast food purgatory looped behind their eyes, pushing minds past every sane boundary into shrieking, cheese-drenched oblivion. No one outside heard a thing over the late-night traffic. In a final flourish of grotesque horror, the victims dangled from ceiling pipes like piñatas, milked by the ghost's writhing tendrils that pierced flesh and sucked out a thick, cheesy life milk in rhythmic pulses. The restroom reeked of sour dairy and regret as the last drops were harvested, leaving withered husks for the morning crew to hose down. Unlike that cowardly Nick the Rat, who'd cross the street rather than use a public bathroom after dark, I report these horrors without flinching. I love milk, and I'm not afraid to admit it. This ghostly extract sounds like the perfect late-night snack. Well, that's all the terror we have time for tonight on the Dark Sewer News Network, from interstellar milking operations to possessed electronics and bathroom fandoms that turn burritos into nightmares. The veil between the ordinary and the obscene is thinner than you think. Keep your doors locked, your TVs unplugged, and your milk refrigerated. These stories may sound like the ravings of the damned, but down here in the sewers, we know better. This is Jane Hanoi signing off with a wink and a creamy grin. Stay curious, stay hydrated, and whatever you do, don't let the dark milk you dry before I do. Sweet dreams, sewer dwellers. Good night.